Um, Thank you, everybody. Obviously, some of you will be very aware of the Cambourne Cambridge project. Tonight, the purpose of the exercise is really to give you an introduction to the environmental impact assessment public consultation, which launched on the 16th of May and will run till the 11th of July. I'll run through a presentation of around 20 minutes of the key points of the presentation. You may well have found already through our ConsultCam's website more details and a brochure which can be downloaded. And I'll talk to you about the other events that we're running, but there will be a couple of face-to-face events as well as events, for example, through the different parish councils as well. So it's important to say this presentation broadly is going to be the one that's used all the different events. So you may or may not wish to see it multiple times. It's probably fair to warn you. On the other hand, the public exhibitions that we do, clearly a better chance to engage with people on a one-to-one basis. During the course of the presentation, you're all currently muted, I'm afraid, is one of the joys of Zoom. However, if you do have a point of urgent clarification, you can put your hand up by using the yellow hand function within Zoom, and hopefully someone will alert me. Otherwise, if you can keep questions to the end, we'll then go into discussion. Again, the process for asking questions is to raise your hand using the yellow hand function, and then we'll sort of take those questions in order. Once you're asked to ask your question, you'll be enabled to speak, but you'll have to unmute yourself as well. So just keep tabs on that. Hopefully that will work reasonably straightforwardly. And as you noted, the session is being recorded. So I think you'll have had the warning that that is the case. So I will start in that case. So the C2C Better Public Transport Project, again, many people will be very much aware of this already. It's a new public transport route that the Greater Cambridge Partnership has proposed, linking, as we all know, Cambourne to Cambridge, going through the new Bourne Airfield development, a new travel hub at Scotland Farm, Hardwick, and the West Cambridge campus, which is also proposed for significant growth. The proposal is also an active travel path for pedestrians, cyclists, and where appropriate horse riders would run alongside and connect with routes such as the planned Cambourne Greenway and improvements to cycling facilities on the Madingley Road to complement the growing rural walking and cycling network. And more details about our Greenways programme can be found through the GCP website. You'll see the address there. Much of the route will be a dedicated busway with no access for private cars, but there will be some locations where the route will run on existing road, ideally where public transport priority can still be assured on that section of road. So the environmental impact assessment public consultation, which is where we are now, this follows 3 previous rounds of public consultations and extensive technical work over a number of periods of years. And as well as those consultations, there have been a series of different workshops at different times, meetings with parish councils, engagement through the local liaison forum and its technical subgroup. But the purpose of this exercise is to seek to inform the environmental impact assessment to consider how we can best manage and mitigate the impacts of the scheme on the landscape and environment. The EIA is required as part of the scheme planning process. Basically, any scheme where there are likely to be significant impacts needs an EIA, and it informs the design of the scheme. It ultimately informs the decision as to whether the scheme proceeds, and it looks at a series of assessments around things like ecology, landscape, noise, cultural heritage, land, and air quality. So we've been doing a range of different surveys, particularly around ecology, but also starting to look at things like archaeology and cultural heritage as well. All the information from the EIA will be set out in the environmental statement, which is a sort of formal document, and that forms part of the portfolio of evidence, which will be submitted in due course to the Department for Transport as part of an application to build the scheme. That's called a Transport Works Act order application. Effectively, it's a bit like a planning application, but it's the particular legislation that applies to rapid transit schemes. This consultation closes midday on Monday, the 11th of July. And as I say, the outcomes of this will inform the final sort of amendments to the scheme itself and the EIA and then the ES. So it will inform each of those documents. They will then go forward to our executive board the decision as to whether to proceed. The proposed route, again, apologies, many people this will be familiar, but you'll see, as we know, working from the left in Cambourne, going through Bourne Airfield, along to the east, going towards Cambridge, up as far as Grange Road, whereupon all services would continue into the city centre and destinations such as the station and CBC, for example. So that is the scheme. What I'll do now is take you through some of the details of it, and I'll show you each of the sections in a bit more detail. And as I say, that information is available in the brochure, which you can download from the ConsultCam's website. So just to give you some background to the scheme, in terms of the operating standards, the intention is that it be served by modern electric public transport vehicles, so looking to limit any issues related to air pollution and noise. In terms of carbon footprint, we'll be looking at the overall net carbon impact of the scheme and looking at ways to limit the amount of embodied carbon through the subtype and quantity of construction materials. There's a wider biodiversity commitment for GCP as a whole, so we need to deliver a minimum of 10% biodiversity net gain for the scheme overall, with a goal of achieving 20%. And effectively, that means that anything that we lose needs to be replaced, plus a margin of at least 10, preferably 20% more than was lost. In terms of land and property, obviously through the design process, we're seeking to reduce, where possible, the impact on land and activities. So clearly it's expensive for us to purchase land, so that the less we need to take, the better. And the wider construction process will follow the relevant industry codes of practice. It's likely that the main construction compound will be on the site of the proposed travel hub. There will be some secondary construction compounds along the route and some smaller ones providing things like welfare facilities. Those would not necessarily be there the whole time. It would depend whereabouts different parts of the scheme were being constructed at any one time. In terms of the active travel route, you can see in red, already orange, the proposed active travel path going along the scheme, also with connectivity up to Dry Drayton to allow the Dry Drayton community to access the travel hub. And then you can see linkage to the green, which is the Comberton Greenway, and the current proposals for Madingley Road improvements, although there are some additional improvements along the Madingley Road that will tie into that in due course. In terms of bus stops along the route, the current proposition is 4 stops at Cambourne, 2 on the Bourne Airfield, the travel hub itself at Scotland Farm, 1 on the St Neots Road in Hardwick, potentially a bus stop in Coton. There's been some discussion about this, and we still think it would offer value, and 1 in the West Cambridge travel hub. In due course, there is potential to connect to a future Cambourne railway station. At the moment, as people will be aware, it's unclear what East West Rail's proposals are, so we're not in a position to be clear where such a station might be. But we've always said that, if there is clarity in due course about a Cambourne railway station, we will continue to work with East West Rail to provide connectivity to that when that becomes clearer. In terms of the proposed travel hub at Scotland Farm, as I say, the aim is to provide some additional connectivity to Dry Drayton, but also access to Hardwick over the existing Blue Bridge. And we'd see some opportunities to also enhance the environment around the Callow Brook, which you can see in the foreground in the artist's impression here. The proposition is for around 2,000 car parking spaces, potentially offering things like electric vehicle charging provision, probably around 300 cycle parking spaces. But again, we'd review that to see what demand is looking like as things change, and all the other things you'd expect at a significant park and ride site. We are aware of things like future mobility and things like scooters that may or may not be popular in the future. And the aim, of course, would be to keep a degree of flexibility so that we can adapt to those changes and opportunities as they arrive. In terms of some of the key impacts and mitigations, we've refined the alignment around the waterworks site to the north of Coton. That reflects feedback around the ecological value of the waterworks, and you'll see that in the drawings. Clearly, landscaping of the route and around the travel hub is a key consideration, and we're using a range of features like bunds, which are sort of low earth mounds, trees, hedgerow planting to screen and soften views. There are places where we provide drainage ponds partly to deal with water runoff from the scheme, but that does also create the opportunity of creating new habitats as well. Where there are areas that are no longer considered viable as agricultural land, there is the potential to plant these as new habitats, but in those locations, it would very much depend on the attitude of the landowner, if they wanted to dispose of land or if they wanted to retain it. But what we'll show is the sketches of what we think would be ideal in terms of landscaping, and again, we'll be engaging with landowners on those issues. The main structure along the route is the M11 overbridge. Where possible, we use off-site construction to minimise the amount of construction work needed on site and the disruption associated, but there will be a further elevated structure to bridge over the Bin Brook and protect the area from any flood risk associated with the scheme. We're aware of concerns about rat running, both in Bourne and Dry Drayton in particular, and we'll be looking at those in our transport assessment and looking at measures to minimise any potential risk. And obviously things like road safety will be paramount. So where the scheme crosses existing roads, there'll be traffic signals in place. And as you expect, there'll be things like wayfinding put in place to ensure that people understand how they can use the active travel path where that meets the existing network. So just running through the different sections of the scheme. The first section is on Cambourne, as has been always the case, primarily running on existing roads through Cambourne, but then to the east, going through a bus-only link from Stirling Way to Broadway with access control, probably cameras with automatic number plate recognition to restrict access. Potentially in due course, there'd be a link to an east-west rail station, but as I said, not necessarily clear at the moment. Because there's not so much construction at this end, there wouldn't be too much disruption, but there is potentially opportunity for some improved landscaping and public realm around the central bus stop. Again, we've had some discussions with the town council. I know they're keen to see the scheme terminated at a railway station, but clearly, as there's still no certainty about that, we'll have further discussions about how that might be put together. The next session is Bourne Airfield, and again, as most people will be aware, that's part of Countryside's Bourne Airfield development, so we are largely fitting within their development site. We would envisage bus stops at either end that would be servicing the new development. I think we and Countryside are both aware that Bourne residents have got concerns about rat running through the village, and junctions, particularly on the Broadway, will be designed to try and minimise that. This again is another location. There may be a construction compound, given that there will be development space available. So that will be another potential location for that. The next section is around Childerley Gate. The houses there at Childerley Lodge would clearly be quite close to the busway. There would be some views and potential noise issues. There's also, we'd be taking away some of the noise barriers that are currently along the side of the A428. So we may need some mitigation measures to offset that. And there'll be some private land taken. The land to the west end along St Neots Road is scheduled for employment. So this is the area here to the left of the pond. We are talking to the landowner who has obviously got aspirations for the development. As things stand, as people will be aware, there is only a draft of the local plan, so it's not formally allocated. However, the indication in the first draft is that it may be allocated for development. If it goes forward, clearly we'd look through the active travel path and even potentially a future bus stop to ensure connectivity, but that's very much something I would say is work in progress at the moment. In terms of the travel hub around Scotland Road, this is mainly an agricultural area. The travel path from up to Dry Drayton would sort of fit in and around existing hedgerows. We clearly don't want to be taking out hedgerows, so it would run partly along the existing verge where there is enough width, or behind hedge where there isn't enough width. Trying to look to minimise any impact on the landscape. There'd be significant planting around the park and ride itself, particularly to mitigate views from the properties to the north. Down to the east, around Callow Brook, there'd be a new drainage pond where water running off from the park and ride could be gathered. As I said, this is likely to be the principal works compound, again, because it's a significant area of space that would need to be levelled. And the traffic transport assessment will look at any other traffic management needed to address concerns about rut running through Scotland Road down from Dry Drayton. In the Hardwick area, the preferred route, as was approved by our executive board, was an off-road route between St Neots Road and the A428. At the time, significant concerns were raised by St Neots Road residents and other Hardwick residents about the loss of trees. So we have recommended a potential update to the route, which would go along St Neots Road rather than going between St Neots Road and the trees, in order to help reduce the volume of traffic along St Neots Road and the interaction between that and the busway. We've proposed that there would be a bus gate to the east of Cambridge Road, just to the west of Long Road, so there wouldn't be through traffic coming along the St Neots Road all the way. That would reduce the amount of traffic that would interfere with public transport. It would also reduce the amount of traffic that would be going down St Neots Road past people's properties as well. So there would hopefully be some environmental benefit as well. In terms of a bus stop, our initial thinking was the ideal location would be at Cambridge Road, but I think there has been a suggestion from some people within the community that Miller's Way would be more convenient. And again, that's one of the sorts of things that we're interested to hear about during the consultation. There would be a loss of on-street parking along St Neots Road if we went for the on-road option, with the need to provide the non-motorised user route as well. Just to the east of this area, you'll see how the route is now aligned to go around the waterworks site rather than through it. And I say the intention of that is to mitigate the ecological impact. There's a band of protected trees in the waterworks, and although actually it's an industrial site, because it's largely untouched, it's got a reasonable high level of ecological value. We've also talked about working with National Highways to try and improve the noise barriers along the A428 itself, along the St Neots Road, where some areas, particularly residents to the east of Cambridge Road, are quite badly exposed to traffic noise. North of Coton, the road crosses the Cambridge Road no more than 40 metres from, sorry, I'll just take a drink, from the nearest home. We've refined the scheme in a number of places to try and keep distance from properties, but also reduce visual impact and also maintain the viability of land parcels. Those objectives are not, unfortunately, all completely compatible. So we've come up with what we think is a workable alignment, but clearly it's going to be difficult to not upset somebody along the way. It is designed to fit into the landscape, and the infrastructure wouldn't be visible from places like Redmeadow Hill, which is one of the viewpoints specified in the local plan. We'll be proposing things like the use of trees, hedgerows and low earth mounds to obscure the route. So whilst buses may be visible, the infrastructure itself should not be. You can see locations where there would be need for things like drainage ponds and potential planting. We do propose a bus stop at Cambridge Road with traffic signals at the junction. And again, we'll be keen to hear more from Coton and the Parish Council on their views on that. In the past, I believe parts of the community have been keen on the idea, the parish less so. We certainly think it would add value to the village to have the ability to make use of the service. It's important to say where we show landscaping along the route, the extent of landscaping will depend to some degree on the views of landowners. Where we need to provide landscaping to mitigate views of the scheme, then we can purchase land directly. Similarly, where we need land for things like drainage ponds, we can purchase it. Where we think it would add value, which would be in some locations, and we've indicated, for example, around here to the north of Coton village itself, adjacent to the school, we think sort of retaining those pockets of land, maybe planting them up, would help to screen the village and address some of the concerns that have been raised. That will depend on the willingness of landowners for land to be made available. Moving down towards the M11, as you see, the route goes through the Coton Orchard and the woodlands to either side of the M11. That would be, as it said, the main structure of the route. We then go through Charles Babbage Road itself, through the campus with traffic signal control to ensure public transport priority for vehicles. The woodland by the M11 is designated as local nature reserve, so we'd be having to seek to minimise the impact and restore and extend planting afterwards to try and sort of maintain an overall level of planting. Within the actual campus itself, there'd be segregated cycle and pedestrian paths, quite a lot of landscaping associated with the master plan, and there would be a new travel hub, which would be a sort of bus stop to serve not just these buses, but other services in and out of the university. And there are ongoing discussions with the university about things like precise locations and what might be needed in terms of other facilities. Typically, you'd expect there to be cycling facilities, and again, maybe some of the mobility facilities as well. Moving forward from West Cambridge as far as Grange Road, the services would go through the West Fields. There's been, over the years, various bits of refinement to minimise the loss of agricultural land. There are still some residual pockets to the east of the route where we need drainage areas that would also then be landscaped. There is potential for screening on the south side of the route that would reduce the impact for overlooking properties. And along the Binbrook itself, we would see some additional planting and potentially creating an area for water runoff. Again, this is all about minimising any potential flood risk associated with the scheme. When we get to Grange Road, there'll be a traffic control junction. Vehicles would then typically head down Grange Road and in, following the route that the U-bus follows, onto the city centre, the station and CBC and other destinations. So that's a very quick run through of the key features of the scheme. In terms of the next steps for the study, the results of the consultation will be presented to our Joint Assembly and Executive Board, as is the usual process. It'll also go to the County Council Highways and Transport Committee and be published online along with various other documentation. Subject to approval by the County Council, an environmental statement would form part of a submission of the Transport Works Act order. That is intended to be late 2022, early 2023. It would be likely that that would then be scrutinised at a public inquiry, and if the application is improved, then construction might start as early as 2024 with the aim to finish construction by 2026. So if there are questions about that timescale, we can come back to those and explain further. So just in terms of the actual mechanics of the consultation, various different ways to respond. We recommend people go through our website to the consultation, where you can download the survey questionnaire and the consultation information. If people have difficulties with that, there is a telephone number that can be called to request hard copies. You can email responses direct through to us as well, but the electronic submission is by far the easiest for everybody. You can also post your feedback to Mandela House, and the address is there. If people need printed copies, large print copies, etc., again, you can call the number that's on the slides here, and that number will be available on our website. Consultation closes on the 11th of July. Just to give you a quick update of the events that are planned, we will have a further webinar on the 20th of June. It will be basically exactly the same as this one. So you're very welcome to come again, but it won't be doing anything different to this particular event. We also have on the 6th of June, the West Area Community Forum. And this is an event where we will be running through not only this scheme, but things like the greenways in the area and some of the other things that are current at the moment. So that potentially is interesting. We're trying to be a little bit more joined up about the way that we present the various different GCP activities. So that may well be interesting to participants. And again, details can be found through our website. And then we will be doing 2 public face-to-face exhibitions. Obviously, we're still not completely out of the woods on the whole COVID front, and we're aware some people may not be comfortable doing face-to-face events, which is why we're still doing some webinars, but we're also aware it is sometimes easier for people to come and actually talk to somebody face-to-face. So we'll do 2 events, one on the 14th of June at Cambourne Village College, one on the 30th of June at the Diamond at Selwyn College. And for people who don't know those venues, we have tried to find venues which are reasonably spacious, where we can keep them reasonably well ventilated. So whilst I appreciate for some people it may still be too early to do face-to-face events, hopefully these are ones which we can keep reasonably COVID safe. And as I say, if there's any more details you can find on the website there. So at this point, really happy to take questions. Just as a reminder, if you do want to ask questions, you'll need to raise your hand, and then once you've been enables, you can then come off mute. So Brian, I've got the first question, I think, from you. So if you unmute yourself, you should be able to ask your question.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, thank you.
Great stuff. My question is, why are we designing an unsustainable busway, which is environmentally harmful? Instead, we should be building only a high quality direct greenway along the existing road, and then finally on existing paths to the east of Cambourne. Everything about this project is going to be massive. We're going to have massive construction costs, massive buses, massive journey times. This doesn't provide point-to-point journeys. Instead, we should be thinking about micromobility, which gives point-to-point journey times, which are much, much quicker than a bus, which is going to dump you at a place which is where you don't want to go. So I think you should be thinking about greenways and micromobility and sustainable active travel. Thank you.
Okay, so thanks for that. I mean, just to deal with a few points, the being dumped a place you don't want to go is a myth that has been perpetrated by a number of people. That's not correct. I have already made that point twice in the presentation. The buses won't be terminating at Grange Road. Lots of people do want to go to Grange Road. There are multiple colleges and sports facilities and schools at Grange Road, but nothing will terminate there. Nobody will be dumped there. That is a myth that has been put about and has never been based in fact at all. In terms of the scheme, we are also proposing to provide greenways and cycling facilities along the line of this route. The reality of the situation is walking and cycling solutions are not for everybody. For some people, they're great, and they're something that GCP is very, very keen to promote, but they don't provide a transport solution for everyone, and particularly for people getting to destinations further afield, people who aren't confident perhaps going through the city itself on a cycle. It's part of the solution. It's not the solution on its own. So yes, absolutely, we're very keen on greenways. It's a key part of our programme. We also need public transport as well. And the aim of this really is to provide public transport as an alternative to the risk in the future that instead we need to end up with more road building. I think that, I'm sure you would agree, would be a far worse outcome. The Madingley Road particularly really wouldn't be suitable for widening as some sort of dual carriageway. We certainly don't want to end up with that as a future requirement, and that's why the decision is to invest in public transport infrastructure instead. So Dragan.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thanks.
All right, okay. I'm interested actually in the section around the Hardwick.
Yeah.
About the street parking along the businesses along the Segregated Road.
Yeah.
I'm the partner in Ashcroft Surgery, veterinary surgery on Segregated Road. And if the street parking is removed, we will have to move our surgery. We've been in the Hardwick for 37 years, and we will have to move our complete business out of the village, because without the street parking, we won't be able to actually provide all the people with the parking. If we go out, the pet shop beside us, they'll have a problem as well. And so it's just I just had a few propositions. I mean, it may not work. I mean, Segregated Road is not particularly busy road. We don't have congestion there. So we were thinking maybe it would be best to keep the buses on the road through Segregated Road rather than making the bus lane through the trees. Anyway, nobody liked it as it is. And the cycle path, I'm not sure, but I think it's possible to make a cycle path along the tree line between A428 and Segregated Road. That way, all the businesses stay as they are, and they have a street parking. We have a bicycle lane on the other side. In the trees. In the trees, and the bus stays on the road. That's one thing. The other one, you were thinking of closing the access from the Madingley side, from the long road side, yeah, basically for the traffic. Along that road, there is a motorcycle testing center, a regional center, which actually sort of tests pretty much quite a few actually towns around. If you close that, all these learners with the mopeds and little motorcycles will have to go down the roundabout and on a very busy dual carriageway. I'm not sure they're going to like that very much. I think you should consider that kind of a problem as well. And secondly, I think if you put somebody in front of the shop, in front of the Hardwick, to see what happens in the morning and during the day around that shop, it's always congested. If you close the basically the access from Long Road, all the people from Cambourne and Barton will start to go through Cambridge Road through this village, and they will make it much worse. I'm not saying that I know everything, but there are just few points. I mean, if we have to move out of village, we have our options, and we will certainly. But it seems to me that there will be a lot of disruption for the villagers with this proposed scheme. I think you can keep that scheme, but with slight changes, you can make it a touch cheaper and much more comfortable for everybody.
Thanks. The point about your parking, we have spent quite a bit of time asking if there is any particular business or property where they need parking. So we'll be very happy to come and have a chat with you directly about that. There may be some scope to retain some parking. If you're the property, the surgery, I think, is correct, you do have some off-street parking, and the last time I looked, you weren't using it. But we're very happy to come and have a discussion with you about it. I think the big question really is about the trees. So the route that we did put forward previously went through the trees, and there was a huge amount of concern raised within Hardwick, and we understand why that was raised. So we very much went back and had another thought about it, and then came up with this alternative solution, which doesn't take the trees. Again, this is really the sort of thing we're consulting on. We're happy to understand which way people want us to go. If we put a cycle route through the trees, we still have to cut the trees down. So based on the sort of feedback we got from residents last time, there was very much pressure that we shouldn't go through the trees. And so I think our aim is to do something that doesn't go through it. And your point about the mopeds is an interesting one. We'll certainly look into that further. Obviously, people are seeking to qualify. They're either getting a driving license or they're not. But I mean, it's an interesting point we can certainly give a bit of thought to. So I think that were most of the main points. But yeah, very happy if you could let someone have your contact details. We're very happy to talk to you about the parking issue. There's a question from Alan Everett, who did post some questions previously. I don't know, Michaela, if you're able to put them into the chat. If Alan, if you'd rather we just read them out, then Michaela can probably post them into the chat and I can read them out in due course. Steve is the next question.
Yes, I would like to concur with some of Dragon's concerns, particularly along St Neots Road in Hardwick. I think the bus gate idea mitigates obviously tree loss to the east of Cambridge Road, but as I understand it, there would still be tree loss to the west of Cambridge Road. Although that area is wider, my understanding is that there will still be environmental impact along that way. Also, if you restrict access to St Neots Road from Madingley direction, then presumably local traffic will then go on to the 428, will come off at the Hardwick junction, and will then come to the western side of St Neots Road, and you'll actually get more traffic along that section and then going into the village as well. So I think there's a lot of unintended problems with the St Neots Road point, and I think I will concur with Dragon with that there seems to be no real traffic problems along that road currently, and I think whatever you do is going to actually make traffic situation worse. And a better solution, I would have thought, both environmentally, from a carbon footprint point of view, and from a people point of view, would have to leave the buses actually on the road as it stands.
Well, as I say, we're interested in which views come out, and it's helpful to get some different perspectives on it. In terms of what solution we come up with, we'll see what comes out of the consultation. I would observe that there's quite a lot of traffic going at a fairly high speed often through Hardwick, And I actually genuinely believe that by putting the bus gate in, it might well help reduce both the amount of through traffic and the speed of traffic going down. So I can see there being some real benefits actually for the village. But again, that we're interested in whether residents see that or not. So we'll see what comes out of the consultation. George. You can unmute yourself now.
Yeah, picking up on the two previous concerns with Hardwick, there's insufficient traffic on the 78th Road at the moment to justify closing it. There's not a lot of heavy traffic. Probably evening is the most busy. If you close that road off, you're then going to force traffic to go through Hardwick past the shop, and that's the biggest concern. It's already a safety hazard around the shop area because the amount of traffic that's trying to overtake park traffic. Traffic coming out of the park and ride is going to turn right through Hardwick to get to Cambourne, Barton, etc. And I just don't see why you need to close the St. Neots Road.
Well, I say we're looking at a compromise solution. It's not our preferred solution. It's not the solution our board signed off, but we took on board the points that were raised by the community. So that's why we've looked at this as a bit of a compromise. Each time we compromise, the scheme is needing to be amended, and we are trying to keep as much of the scheme as a bus priority scheme as we can. I think there are a range of different traffic movements. Quite a bit of it is coming along from places like Cambridge and from the west, not necessarily just from Barton and Cambourne. So I think there are a lot of vehicles which wouldn't be coming out past the shop. Clearly, there would be some that would be, and some will continue to do that. So I think there are a range of different movements. But as I say, this is an alternative which we're consulting on now. Are there any other people who want to ask questions at the moment, or should I go to Alan's questions and we can then? Yeah, okay. I'll take these three. George, have you still got your hand up, or have you got? I don't know if you come up for supplementary. But I'll take Alistair Burford's first. You can come off mute now.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can indeed.
Okay. Well, firstly, a point. Page 3 of your brochure suggests that, well, actually says traffic is returning to pre-pandemic levels on Madingley Hill. Well, it's not. I've been amongst a group of people that have been surveying this over the last 3 or 4 months. And at the moment, traffic is very, very rarely backed up further than the existing bus lane. Now, you've always said that when Westside comes on, when the Cambridge comes on, Cambourne comes on board, traffic is going to be increased by 70%. Well, to be frank, you could extend the existing bus lane by 300%. Still not affect the American cemetery, which has always been the bugbear, and surely that would solve the problem. My second point is, on page 12 of your leaflet, you talk about the area going between Madingley Mulch and Coton as having reflective or solar studs that will be used to provide guidance at night. I'd just like to remind you that it's dark for about 4 months of the year during peak time, i.e. in the morning and the afternoon. Nowhere have I ever seen anything about light pollution on this stretch. And God forbid if somebody ever got attacked or and you needed to put in additional lights, surely this creates a problem that's never ever been broached.
Okay, so pick up the first question in terms of traffic growth. So we've been monitoring traffic growth around Cambridge.
So have you been monitoring it on Madingley Road?
We've been monitoring it on radials around the city. We're not saying that traffic is back to where it was pre-COVID, but it is growing significantly towards those levels, and that's
no,
trend
it's not. I can assure you, it's not.
traffic is, we can send you some graphs of data as to how it is growing. DFT are also been monitoring data growth as well. It's not back yet, but it will get there. And if anything, one of the concerns we've got is that as people return to work, because people are nervous at the moment about public transport, we all know COVID hasn't gone away yet, but we may end up with actually more people going back into car usage, and we sort of start slipping back in terms of the degree to which people are using public transport and sustainable modes. So it is a real concern. It hasn't got back to where it was before, but we can all remember what it was like 2-3 years ago, and it was pretty bad. It is likely to get there and get worse if we don't act about it. So, you know, this isn't about something about dealing with today. As say, we're looking to open a scheme in 2026 that is there to run for the next sort of 20 years. It's not something about what's happening now, where we're still in the tail end of the COVID era. And, you know, we know lots of people are still working from home at the moment and will be increasingly returning to the workplace, maybe not 5 days a week again, but 3 days a week again. And lots of people are already back at the moment. In terms of the other point around lighting, so the idea of the solar studs is specifically not to create light pollution. There's always a bit of a balance here. So one thing is that you street light it, but then light pollution becomes a really big problem, and overall we are avoiding that. Does that mean that it's not lit not as well as it might be for some people? Possibly so, but that applies to a lot of rural transport anyway, that it's not fully lit. And the idea of the solar studs are something which helps you see the way you're going, but without the negative impacts of light pollution. Yes, we totally understand that from a security point of view, it might be nicer for some people to have it fully lit, but that has got some serious ramifications in terms of wildlife, light pollution for people like yourself who live near the route as well. So, you know, that's again, it's a balance. Very happy to get people expressing different views in this consultation on that point, but we think that's probably the right balance to be struck. So I think in terms of people with their hands up, George, you've had one go. So if I go to Sue first, please. Yes, if you can unmute yourself, then you should be able to speak. You should be able. Yes, that's right.
Can you hear me
Yeah.
now?
Yes, now. Yeah.
Really, just to follow everyone else's points about Hardwick, if you are going to meet Dragon at the vets, could you please just go and stand outside the shop, the main shop, through Hardwick? As other people have said, it's impossible to get through at times. And if we're going to have traffic, the extra traffic from the growth of Bourne Airfield and West Cambourne coming through the village as well, Cambridge Road is so much busier. Even with quietening procedures further down. So please do send your guys along to the shop in Hardwick around that road, because I'm presuming there's going to be also traffic lights at the turning of West St. Neots Road and Cambridge Road.
Yes.
Yeah. So that will back up all the way down past the shop. It's quite crazy at the moment.
Not necessarily. It may actually make it easier because it may mean that people can get out, whereas they're not at the moment. So that can work both ways. Very happy to. We are intending to come to Hardwick Parish Council, by the way, to have a discussion specifically about Hardwick issues. So when we do that, very happy to have a bit further discussion about some of these sort of Hardwick specific points. You know, I think the point you're making about the shop is something we'll relay back to county colleagues. It sounds like it's not necessarily just an issue of this scheme so much as an existing problem, which, as you say, could be exacerbated in future. So yeah, it's something that certainly we ought to come and talk to you about, but it may be something that colleagues from the county will come and pick up in terms of what the issues are. And then George, were you wanting a further question, or did you still have your hand up?
No, it was one other thing I wanted to bring up, but I didn't get the chance. Bus stops.
Yeah.
You're proposing one in Miller's Way. At the moment, villagers at the bottom end of the village have a long walk up to the Cambridge Road to St. Neots Road to get the bus.
Yeah.
If you do go ahead with the busway, couldn't you put another bus stop to the right, just as the gate is on the busway, so that people at the bottom of the village don't have so far to walk up.
Dare I say it, that was where we thought we wanted to put it. That's why that's why we put options in the consultation. I thought Cambridge Way was the best way. Cambridge Road was the best place to put it. It was suggested by some members of the parish council, I think, that Miller's Way would be more popular. We're quite happy to get what views people have on that point, because it seemed more logical to us to put it at Cambridge Road. I think Miller's Way gives you I think people were thinking maybe gives you access over towards the park and ride. I'm not sure, but again, yeah, very happy to get different views on that, because that wasn't the view that was given to us previously.
When are you coming to the parish council in Hardwick?
I don't, Michaela, are you able to give us the date on that?
I've spoken to Tony Chill today. It's probably going to be the 15th of June.
Yeah, the next parish meeting.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. So yeah, very happy to pick up some of those issues in a bit more depth there. Yeah. Steve, there's some questions we've had through from Alan Everett that have been put in the chat. So if you don't mind, I'll take those while they're there, and I'll come back to you and anyone else who's put their hand up in the meantime. So just paraphrasing the questions from Alan, one is about the consultation which went ahead towards the end of last year. County Council consulted on proposals to put a bus gate on the St Neots Road west of Long Road, and Alan is asking, I know he has requested from County the results of that consultation. We understand they have finished the consultation, they have a report. I have to say, I'm not quite sure why it's published, and I have asked them whether they can publish it. So I hope it will be published imminently, and we will also be asking them, and I'll forward this question on to the County Council to remind them that they do need to get on and get that published. The next one, so we're asking questions about both east and west of St Neots Road. The bus gate itself is to the east. Along the west of Cambridge Road, so the west of Cambridge Road, we would propose initially to carry on online. Otherwise, you'd end up with a really complicated junction at the top end of Cambridge Road. So we have previously presented not an option with a segregated route. That there was the segregated route was what we had proposed originally. I think at the previous parish council meeting, we showed a series of different routes. So we had bus lanes, an offline route through the trees, and an online route, which were the options we consulted on about 3 years ago. We're currently, what we've put forward is the proposal for the use of the bus gate and then running online, which is really to minimise the impact on the trees. Again, if people want to go into a bit more depth on that when we come to the parish council, we can certainly do that. Yeah, so I think the current proposals, we are looking to minimise tree loss west of Cambridge Road as well as to the east of Cambridge Road. And then in terms of reduction of lay-bys, so I mean, I've heard the point that was made previously about the need to try and maintain some parking. And I say, if there are some specific locations where we need to try and preserve parking, we will try and do that. We certainly don't think we can keep all of it, particularly the narrowest bits. But I mean, I've listened to the point that was made by, I think it was Dragan earlier, and we will certainly be looking at that again carefully to see where there is essential rather than perhaps non-essential lay-bys. Whether or not we remove them, we will need to provide bus stops at the relevant locations, and that's one of the other sort of draws on the width of the road that's needed. In terms of other things, bin lorries and delivery vans, to some degree, they do what they do. Bin lorries tend to be early in the morning, but unfortunately, they will need to come along the route. And there's the reason that we preferred an offline route through the trees was to avoid things like bin lorries and delivery vans, which I think what you've sort of queried. So that is why we would prefer to go off road, because that will disrupt buses. If we compromise with this on-road route, yes, it will be more of a conflict. In terms of customers and visitors, the majority of businesses, as far as I can see, have got parking facilities, and certainly the vets, as I understand it, has got. I mean, I've looked at it, and it does have parking facilities. So I need to understand a bit more what's going on there. I think, Alan, you actually you identified a couple of different businesses you felt were particularly adversely affected. I mean, one of them was a burnt out Shell, as far as I could tell. The garage has got significant parking, and I understand also has some off-site parking as well. So at the moment, I've heard from Dragan the concerns he's got. I'm very happy if there are other specific businesses or residents who have problems with parking. Really anxious to understand that. We will work out how we can work with them. Sorry, kind of what's next? Hey, so the questions are all in the chat. They should be visible to everybody. I hope they've been posted in the chat, I believe. Yeah. Sorry, Steve. You can unmute yourself. No, you're mute again now.
Right,
yeah,
can you hear me?
Yeah, you can, yeah.
I'm not sure whether this parish council meeting at Hardwick in June will be open or not. If it isn't, is it possible to have a public meeting to discuss locally? Because I think most of the issues that we're getting tonight are related to Hardwick. I
believe it is public, and certainly we will be very much wanting it to be, because it, yeah, I agree. So, but my understanding, Michaela, is that it is a public meeting.
Yes. Yes, this is also my understanding.
Yeah.
So we can ask questions rather than just observe, yes?
Absolutely, yes.
Yep, okay, good, thank you.
The aim, what we're trying to do is basically go around, have meetings at all the different parishes along the route. Obviously, different communities will have different issues. And so, you know, subject to diaries and availability is what we're trying to do, as we have done a number of times along the history of the scheme, is to make sure we get out to all of those, because then there is chance to go into some of the in-depth issues. Sorry, George.
Just quickly, I'm the parish councillor on Hardwick, and it is open.
Yeah, right. Thank you.
15, that is open to the public.
Yep. No, thanks for confirming. Any other questions, Pauline? Again, you just need to unmute yourself now. You're able to speak. You need to come off mute. Yeah, that's okay.
Could you confirm the actual date that you're visiting Hardwick? Is it the 16th or the 15th of June?
15th of June.
15, okay. And then the second thing is, Joe, if you, on your report on page 27, you're still showing that very short hedge between the cycleway and the main carriageway on both of your cross sections, and I am concerned that we won't be able to have visibility when we're coming out of our properties if you put that very short hedge there.
So we'll certainly need to look at visibility issues as we go forward. I'll have a look at the particular concern, and yeah, we can certainly respond on that.
There is a lot of houses and entrances and businesses that if you put a small hedge between the cycleway and the main carriageway, we won't be able to see what's coming.
It would certainly not be something that would be high enough to cause a visibility issue. We wouldn't want that at that location.
No, but then if it is a low hedge, you'll have to maintain it, won't you?
Yes.
Okay.
So in the Paul, is your hat? Yeah. Paul Wells has just asked, has the carbon impact been considered in constructing this route? It's in the process. As the designs come forward, yes, we'll be looking at both the carbon involved in the construction of the route, but also the carbon benefits of encouraging people onto public transport, walking and cycling, rather than the use of their cars. So yes, we will be looking to quantify both aspects of that. And that's the sort of thing that feeds into the environmental impact assessment. So, Pauline, have you put your hand up again, or was it there before? If you wanted to ask further, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, I get a bit confused.
No, I know. 3 years on, we're still learning.
Just clarify. You're saying that the buses and the traffic will still use the existing road that is west of Cambridge, west of Cambridge Road. Is that correct?
For a short section, yes, but it obviously the preferred route we had before was off-road all the way.
Yeah.
But if we're on road, it doesn't really work to then get them off-road for a very short section and then get through to the junction. So yes, they would be.
So therefore, east of Cambridge Road will be the active travel. That is buses.
No, the active travel would be right the way through. But right the way
through.
Well, there'll be a walking and cycling path right the way through. That goes from Cambourne to Cambridge.
Okay. But then prohibiting of cars will only be on the east of Cambridge Road. Is that correct?
That would be literally at a point to the west of Long Road. So if you lived in that section, then you would come in through the Cambridge Road junction. The only point cars would be prohibited would be at a point just to the west of Long Road.
To Cambridge Road. From
it would literally be at the point to the west of Long Road, because residents who live along there would still need to be able to get to their houses. So they would still be permitted to go along. What you wouldn't have is through traffic, which you have at the moment, and obviously it would significantly reduce the amount of traffic.
Okay, only it just seemed to be the fact that you are prohibiting cars on the east of, but you're not prohibiting cars on the west. No,
we would. I mean, in an ideal world, we would, from our point of view, but we recognise it's very difficult to do that. And, I would reiterate the reason that we have put this as an alternative. The preferred route that was approved by Executive Board is the one that goes through the trees. Okay. There was a lot of concern raised, and I'm fairly confident you're one of the people who was concerned by that.
Yes.
We are trying to come up with a compromise solution that doesn't go through the trees. It may not be the perfect solution, but we are doing our best to find something that's addressed that concern. And so that's why we've come up with this alternative. Very happy to get views on it, but please do remember that the reason we're proposing this as an alternative is as a compromise from something that clearly you and many of your fellow residents were very unhappy about.
Okay, thank you very much for clarifying that.
Alistair again. Yeah, again, you just need to demute yourself.
Just to clarify, residents in the bulk of Hardwick off Cambridge Road, if they want to access the M11 in future, if this goes ahead, they need to come out of Cambridge Road, turn left, up to the Scotland Farm roundabout, down the 428 and then down Magnolly Hill. Is that correct?
If they were wanting to go southbound on the M11, yes.
Right, okay. So will their carbon footprint be entered into your EIA? Because it seems to me that the amount of traffic that's doing all those extra miles would far outweigh any saving your bus is going to make.
Well, it's not a huge amount of traffic, and some of that traffic would do that.
Well, surely, if it's not a huge amount of traffic, you should allow it to turn right.
There's a range of traffic that goes along that road at the moment. A lot of it, which isn't necessarily going to the M11. So there's a very specific, subset. Yeah.
If they want to head down towards the city or the M11.
Yeah.
So they've got to go all the way around. Okay. Yeah. And with regard to this scheme opposed to the previous one, I think offering what was termed, I think, as a rubbish scheme, taking the trees down, and then offering an even worse scheme to make the original scheme look good is not a good look.
That's for yourself. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, question from Paul. What will encourage take-up of public transport is in frequency buses. So the first bit of the question, yes, we are looking at frequent buses, so significantly less than every 20 minutes. And, you know, I think it's really important people understand, and I'm sure many of you are acutely aware that rural bus services have been in decline. One of the things we're trying to do is make it more attractive for operators to maintain rural public transport, to effectively reverse that decline, and yes, to get higher frequency buses, so significantly better than once every 20 minutes. Again, it helps avoid traffic congestion. In terms of the city centre, you'll be aware that we are looking at what could be done in the city as well. There's a parallel consultation ongoing, which is on the network hierarchy within the city. And also we've consulted on what we're calling making connections, which is looking at mechanisms that might be put in place to reduce traffic congestion in the city, but also raise revenue, again, to enable us to fund more public transport. So, you know, that is something that we are working on in parallel, but it's very complementary to this scheme. Closing St Neots Road to local traffic would be very marginal in terms of its impact in terms of congestion on the A428. And I think it's debatable whether it would create congestion through Hardwick and Cambourne. We are talking about one small section, and arguably it's also about vehicles that are perhaps currently going down the St Neots Road that maybe should be on the A428 anyway. So I think there's a mixture of different routes going on there, but hopefully we are addressing some of the public transport issues. Dragan, you got one more question?
Oh, hi. Just a few more points.
Yeah.
I would completely agree with Alistair. I think it was about the carbon impact, closing the actual access from the Madingley. And I think you're going to have a queue once they go around the roundabout, Scotland Farm roundabout, and go down the 428, and then try to go off the 428 up the roundabout, Madingley Mulch roundabout. There will be queue of cars stretching actually to the dual carriageway. I think you are underestimating the amount of traffic passing the Cambridge Road, quite a lot. I live there every day. I don't know who looked at this, but I live there. I'm mainly bicyclist and motorcyclist. I rarely sit in a car. So it's in my interest to have a bicycle path, particularly because that's my main sort of mode of transport. But I think that is underestimated. The impact you're going to do with this is it's going to be significant for most people in Hardwick. When it comes to basically a tree line, yes, I don't want it away, but I don't think that's a good excuse to change all of this and
sorry,
make it worse.
Could you just repeat that last bit again about the trees?
Oh,
I missed it.
the trees, I think they have to stay. And
sorry, is it just me or?
oh, I don't know. Can you hear me?
You can very faint now.
No.
Oh, that's better now. That's better.
Yeah. Oh, that's all right.
Yeah,
Sorry for that. I think, personally, we will talk about the Ashcroft surgery. It's not a problem. We closed that parking because of coronavirus problems for the last 2 years. We're going to open it in the next 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And that will give us only about four car spaces. We have about 80 people coming through the practice daily. But it's a different issue anyway. But as you say, I cannot see that you need to change all of it just because you are keeping the trees there. They should stay, and I'm all for it. I don't see why you have to change everything else around the Hardwick area. It will make more problems than it will solve. That's his mind. We'll discuss it anyway. Yeah. I just thought, yes, Alistair had a real good point there. Yeah. All right.
Okay, thanks. Okay. So Paul, I think it is, has added another comment about removing green screening along St Neots Road will impact on well-being and outlook of Hardwick residents, even if we think of its low ecological value. I mean, I think the point that was made about the ecological value, there was a lot of statement about how we were taking out mature trees and a significant overestimate of the amount of mature trees that would be lost, which was completely incorrect. They are mainly relatively young trees that were planted when the road came in. However, as I keep saying, we've taken on board the concerns that were raised, which is why we've come up with an alternative solution. So we do recognise the concern, and I mean, I think particularly it's the visual amenity that losing the trees would there will be a significant visual impact by getting rid of them, and that is understood. That is why we've looked at an alternative. Susan Burford.
Hi, sorry, Joe.
Hi.
I was just wondering, can you just clarify how many buses are intended to run down here? Because I read your consultation document, and are you saying from 5 o'clock till midnight you're going to be running 8 buses an hour?
By midnight, no, I would have thought not. We would certainly be looking to improve bus services. So we are trying to, as part of the work we do on making connections, the aim is to get to a point where we're getting about 6 buses an hour each way for a much bigger part of the day. I mean, services at the moment are very poor. And as we've always said, the services will be provided by private operators. So the aim at peak time will be to aim for about certainly 8 an hour, maybe 10, depending on how successful the take-up is. That would taper off into the evening. And depending on what the take-up is, clearly we'll know exactly how many buses are. But yeah,
and how are you going to get this modal shift? I watch the buses going down Madingley Road every day, and at certain times there's nobody on these buses. So how are you going to get that modal shift from car, which isn't happening at the moment, to a bus?
Well, that is why we're looking to provide more dedicated infrastructure. I mean, it's the same as happened if you look at the existing guided busway, whereas bus patronage, as you say, is in decline over a lot of the city. The existing guided busway has been very successful. COVID setting aside, and totally understanding the comments that at the moment, you know, we have seen a significant change, but the guided busway has really been on a completely different trend to the rest of the city, because people have more confidence in the services, both in terms of frequency and reliability.
Okay, and if this trend continues, which, you know, most companies are now going back to work maybe twice a week, 3 times a week, there is a struggle to get people back into the office. We've proven that we can work from home. I think the county councils haven't got their employees back to work because there's going to be a struggle getting them back to work. So if things in a year's time don't change, then what?
Well, as I said, whatever happens, this scheme is likely to be looked at on public inquiry, and I'm sure that is one of the issues that will be looked at. It's a topic that's being debated quite hotly, I'd say, within the transport profession. It's a very valid point, and at the moment, I would.
But why would you need to go to public inquiry to debate it when you can see it with your own eyes? You know, my husband Alistair mentioned about the traffic down Madingley Road. You said you've got that traffic information. Can we all see that traffic information to prove that traffic is getting back to normal on Madingley Road?
I haven't said traffic is normal. It is building up, and we can provide
it's not, though. It's not, and that's the information that we all need to see.
Okay, we can provide you information that shows how traffic across the city is
building
up.
No, not across the city, down Madingley Road.
Traffic is anyway.
Not across the city. This is we keep trying to get this information. Yeah. You're making these broad statements to say traffic's getting back to normal, and that justifies putting a busway down the green belt here. But no, it's not. And you're talking about general traffic around Cambridge. Yes, if you go towards Madingley, Adam Brooks Hospital, I can see the traffic's built up there. That's gone back to normal. But here, it's not back to normal. And that's the information that you're making broad statements about. It's getting back to normal. We want to see the evidence that it's getting back to normal.
Getting back to normal doesn't mean it's got to normal. I mean, it wasn't normal before, it was chaos before, but what it's saying is traffic is building up. And
no, traffic isn't, and that's our contention.
Okay.
Traffic isn't, and that's what we want to see from you.
Yeah.
Let us see the information that you have, the evidence that you're basing this on. You know, all the way through this scheme, evidence has been lacking. Show us the evidence that traffic is building up on Madingley Road.
Even their offices are on hot.
Okay. Sorry, Sue Walden.
Hi, you can hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with Susan, but you can hear there's a lot of passion behind the Hardwick residents.
Yeah.
If this has to go ahead because you're realizing that traffic is building up, why can't we continue to use East St Neots Road? It really is so quiet. If you sit there, it really is no problem in the day. Why can't the buses and the traffic carry on using East St Neots Road?
Well, I say this is a consultation, so we're happy. You know, that's one of the views that I would encourage you to put forward, and see. As I say, we've come up with a compromise solution, which as I said before, I genuinely think one of the challenges in Hardwick is vehicles coming down the St Neots Road often too fast. I've stood there and there's been heavy vehicles coming down, going straight through, and actually I genuinely think it would help the environment along St Neots Road to not have those heavy trucks, in some cases, just going straight through the village. If that's not felt to be a concern, that's a fair point to raise. So, you know, please do express those concerns, and we will sort of take those on board as we finish.
Okay, thank you.
So this question from Paul: dedicated infrastructure won't work on its own. Affordable bus tickets. Yeah, absolutely. The whole issue around bus costs is one of the ones we're trying to pick up in making connections, because we agree that, you know, to make public transport competitive, we do need to look at, I think, both, it's not just the cost of tickets, but it's also things like ticketing. So there's sort of more flexible approaches to ticketing. So yes, that is something else that we are definitely looking at to see how we can address and make it better. Alan's pointed out that our Mayor Brown were doing some surveys, presumably associated with Bourne Airfield. I don't know what the results of that are. That was probably short-term rather than time series data, so I don't know how useful it is, but I can certainly see if there is any useful data we can get from them. Right, I don't see any other hands at the moment. Has anybody got any final questions before we? Okay, got a couple more. So Pauline again.
Sorry, I get a bit confused with the mute.
Yeah, all right.
One of the things I think that I personally can see will be a problem for Hardwick is the park and ride, that it will be illuminated 24 hours a day, and it will be operating 24 hours a day. And I'm concerned that Hardwick will experience a lot of light pollution. And what is the GCP going to be doing about that?
So it certainly, we will need to look at the lighting for it. I mean, effectively, what we look at nowadays is the use of LEDs, which are much more controllable than the old style lights. So in the past, you'd have quite lots of light spill coming out. But yes, we will need to ensure that there's planting around the park and ride to minimise it, and to make sure that we've got lighting that's carefully designed to sort of shine downwards rather than having sort of spill out towards the wider community. Obviously, it's somewhere across the A428, but yes, it's one of the issues we do need to take on board. Then Brian.
Yes, hello. I'd like to take up the point again about point-to-point journey times. Active travel will be much quicker than the bus. And I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
A friend of mine left at the same time from Falmere, Cafe Sita, and she got a lift to the Meldrum station, took a train, and then walked from the station to the Jesus Lane roundabout. I cycled, and I was half an hour ahead of her. So cycling will be a lot quicker. Now, the points you made about not everyone can cycle, not everyone can take the bus. If you've got a mobility buggy, then you perhaps would like to use the mobility buggy. And that's why I think the Greenway allows everyone to travel, including small children, whereas buses, only a small section of the population can use the buses. Plus, the fares will be very expensive.
Yeah, as I say, the fact is there are plenty of people who can't or don't cycle. So we're not disputing the importance of cycling as one element of the story, but it is not for everybody, and we do need to provide services for other people as well. There are lots of people who have limited mobility and can use public transport, do use public transport, but would not be able to cycle. So Paul, the problem with Hardwick is congestion down Cambridge Road, not necessarily. Yeah, I mean, there's the point's been made already this evening about Cambridge Road. I think it's a valid point. I'm not sure, frankly, it's entirely related to this scheme, but it is a valid point. And as I said, it's something that we will relay back to colleagues at the County Council to give some thought to in terms of the challenges on Cambridge Road. So yeah, point that we've taken that point on board. Okay, and if there's nothing else, then I think we've lost a few attendees as well, so maybe people are getting hungry. As I said, I did give you the details. I'll just put the slide up again. So there are a couple of other events. I mean, if the colleagues in your villages or anybody else is interested, the details of those events will be available on our website. The presentations will basically be the same, so you won't get anything radically exciting and different, I'm afraid, and it'll probably be me again. But as I say, that will be there. In terms, a couple of other points appeared in the chat. Alan, the dates of the Hardwick Parish Council, I'm not sure. All I know is that the date, as Michaela's given, is, as I understand, a correct date. So I'm sure that will be distributed in the appropriate circumstances. And there's a final question from Paul. No, that's still the question we've had before. So I think that's the same. So yeah, I don't think there's anything else in the chat. Okay, in that case, can I just thank everybody for their time? I would encourage you to respond to the consultation as well. And if you let other people know about it, very happy to get your responses, but we've heard some helpful contributions today. So thanks for your time on that.